Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Jim Morrison, and with me, as always, is our host, Hal Humphreys. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, today, our guest is Patrick Brown from Valutrust. Let me bring him in. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you. How are y'all doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Man, thank
Fantastic. Patrick, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. You know, when we were getting ready for this, you and I kind of knocked around the idea of having a hunting episode where we talk about hunting and fishing and just skip the appraisal business altogether. As you can see, I'm in my cabin
you.
um, on a knoll in a wood at the end of the lane in Tennessee. So we can definitely do that if you'd prefer.
Sounds like a great idea for me. Not sure that's what the audience has signed up for, though.
Well, let's throw them a curveball every now and then. I'm fine with that.
Sure.
I actually got my bank robber fly rod out last night. Put some new line on it. Did some practice casting down at the field. I may try and hit a little trout stream this afternoon if I can get things
Mm.
wrapped up in time. So, that is my plan for the day.
God, that sounds like a great idea.
Well, do me a favor and tell us a little bit about you, how you got in the industry, and how you ended up being, you know, chief appraiser at Valutrust.
Yeah, you bet. So yeah, name's Patrick Brown, of course, y'all know that. And I'm based out of Kansas City. It's where I've been for the last golly, 25 years. Got a wife and 5 kids, and got into the appraisal business about 22 years ago. My wife and I were buying our first house, and of course, part of that is taking out a mortgage loan, which means the appraiser is going to come visit our home. And I was at a point in my work life where I was looking for a change, and so I was that annoying borrower that was following the appraiser around the house, asking lots of questions. Lucky for him, it was an easy house to measure, and there wasn't a lot to it. So anyhow, he and I struck up a relationship, and after getting together a handful of times and basically some informal interviews, decided that we were a good fit for each other and started working together. And a couple of years later, I had taken the coursework, completed training, and met the requirements for the state of Kansas, and got licensed.
Wow.
And shortly thereafter, started my own shop. Although I quickly learned there was a lot I did not know. Um, and so I took a step back, and actually joined another appraisal firm where there was an SRA who was one of the principals, and the other principal was a commercial appraiser who was working on his MAI, and man, it was just a tremendous place to learn an awful lot about appraising. And so I was there for a little while, and then moved on to Rels as a staff appraiser for just a very short time, and then joined Value Trust Solutions about 10 and a half years ago.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, started as a reviewer, looking at appraisal reports that came in. Did that every day for about a year, and then moved into the position of overseeing our quality control team, and then a few years later moved into a position of overseeing our quality control team, and also the team that is responsible for the order from the time the appraiser accepts it until the time they deliver it.
Nice,
So
nice.
yeah, in
So,
a nutshell.
I grew up in the business, so I take for granted a lot of things about the process of becoming an appraiser. My dad was an appraiser, but one of the things that hit me early on, when I was at university, I worked with an appraiser here in Nashville named Mike Ishii. Mike was an MAI, and I realized pretty early on the benefit of getting mentoring and training from different people along the way. I've worked with four different appraisal companies over the years. Have had my own company for the past probably 5 years. And I think that path to becoming an appraiser of working with other people and learning different things from different people because they've all got something to share, they've all got something to add is a really good way to do it. So, Patrick, again, thank you for being here. Let me do this. I'm going to take a real quick break and we're going to hear from one of our sponsors and we'll be right back.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense, benefiting over 10,000 real estate professionals nationwide. Explore our exclusive appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by Patrick Brown, Chief Appraiser at Valutrust. We just heard in the last segment a little bit about his history in the industry. And Patrick, I think this is a really good kind of segue into the next topic we're going to talk about, which is you've got all this experience working with other appraisers, doing review appraisal work, and then working in the ordering and from stem to stern process for an appraisal. You've seen a lot of appraisals come across your desk. When I was a young man, I had an appraiser tell me once, and this was on the commercial side, so it's a little bit different. But he said, the value is really what matters. And you need to articulate your report in a way that makes the reader understand how you got to that value. But he focused on just getting the value correct. I know a lot of appraisers out there think, I got the value right. Why are we picking nits about, this, that, and the other thing? What are some issues you've seen come across your desk with appraisal reports that you think appraisers should know about that lead to credibility of the value conclusion as opposed to just the value's right, let's not pick on the nits?
That's a great question. Boy, it goes back to, I think, of course, the value needs to be right. And by right, we mean supported, right? I mean, it's, there's analysis and explanation to back up what that final number ends up being. But the way the report reads, and just, let's say we're talking about form reports, because I think that's probably what a lot of the audience is accustomed to and acclimated to. Having a well-written and form report, and by well-written, I mean a report where, when it's appropriate, the appraiser summarizes versus just states in terms of the sales history for the subject property and the comps. And all the more so when there's a meaningful delta between that prior sales price and the appraised value, or the reconciliation between the approaches to value, like a good summarization explaining the weaknesses and strengths of each approach and why one was weighted more heavily than the other, or why one was given no consideration. Like, that's all fine. But it should lead the reader to understand why the appraiser thought what they thought. And then another element, and it's something that's pretty simple and easily curable, is spell checker.
You're talking to me right now, I'm sure. For the folks that have listened to the podcast at all over the past year, I'm pretty open about this. I'm dyslexic, so spelling is a real struggle for me. And I live in a world of Grammarly. I've got Grammarly downloaded onto my desktop, and it spell checks, it checks grammar, it makes suggestions for things. I don't always agree with it, but what it does is, look, Patrick, you get this. You did appraisal work for a long time. You put it on the page, and you can't see it anymore, right? It's there. It makes sense. And as an appraiser, one of the things that I really enjoy and think helps me out is when someone in your position calls me and says, "Hey, Hal, got a couple of questions for you," and this is, the spelling errors. Fine, point those out. I don't have an ego when it comes to spelling. Obviously, I've long since gotten over that. But sometimes even slightly bigger issues of a reviewer reads my commentary and says, "Hey, I think I know what you did here. I think I see where you're going, but you didn't say this one thing." I'm like, "Oh, I thought it." I in the process of writing this report, I considered it and I thought I'd articulated it, but I didn't. So a second set of eyes can be incredibly useful, right?
Yeah, you bet. No, and that's something, and we're fortunate because we've got at Valutrust, we've got a couple of other appraisers on staff, and they're experienced and know what they're doing, and they're easy to work with, and so those are those conversations we love to have, Hal. I mean, if we can get on the phone and speak with an appraiser and take that exact approach of, hey, help me understand kind of what was going on here, what did you have in mind, and just have a dialogue about it. It goes a long ways, and I think and I think something that can help, and it helped me as an appraiser, and you're in good company because I too am dyslexic, and I too have Grammarly monitoring everything I write. And so I'm right there with you. And so taking that report, writing it up, making sure it just meets the standards of what USPAP requires. It meets the standards. If it's for Fannie, Freddie, or FHA or the VA or USDA, being familiar with those different entities' requirements also goes a long ways. And then, of course, being familiar with the appraisal order instructions, which we know can be laborious to read through, but still, it's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Taking all that into consideration, completing the report, and if you have the luxury, if an appraiser's got the luxury to sit on that for a day and then come back and read it, it seems to me, at least for me, that works. Is I write something, if I can sit on it, come back and revisit it the next day and read through it, proof it, I'll catch errors. I'll catch things.
You can see things better if you put it in the drawer for a night and come back and look at it. Absolutely. Let me ask you this, and I'm going to go off script here. I know. So for the folks that listen, we usually have what we call a show sheet that kind of gives us general topics we're going to talk about. It's not an actual script, but Patrick, let me ask you this. I'm an appraiser. I'm out here. I'm working on a report for Valutrust. I've got an issue I'm not sure what to do with. Would it be best practice for me to maybe get on the phone and call you or one of your other appraisers and say, hey, I've got this issue. What do you think? And knock it back and forth?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, we love those conversations. You bet. You bet.
Okay. Well, let's do this. I'm going to take a very short break and hear from another one of our sponsors, and we will be right back.
Are you wondering how property insurance is changing in the wake of climate events and natural disasters? Need a primer on appraising religious properties? Want to learn how tech tools can streamline your workload? The Appraisal Institute's Trending Topics Thursdays webinar series is designed to help appraisers everywhere do their best work by keeping a pulse on industry trends, tools, and relevant skills. Join the Appraisal Institute as a member to gain access to our on-demand library of timely content featuring leading experts, or join us live for the next webinar. Live sessions are free to attend for members and non-members alike. Visit appraisalinstitute.org to explore the free webinar series.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I've got Patrick Brown from Valutrust on the line with me today. Patrick, thank you again for taking the time to be here. We've got some changes coming down the pike in this crazy industry that we call appraisal. The new UAD is all the buzz right now. There are going to be some changes in how appraisers will be submitting their appraisals. The 1004 form out the window, 1007 out the window. We're going to be dealing with the UAD and one standard uniform residential appraisal report that is built based on the logic of the UAD. What are some things you think appraisers could do today to help streamline their process and make it a little bit less of a slowdown when UAD starts to get implemented?
Get involved. And by that, I mean, take time to get involved in industry trade groups that are spending time on this topic. Because this is a big change. I mean, this is a really massive change to our industry. And I don't say that and it's not a scary thing. I mean, the unknown can be, but especially as long as it remains unknown. But as soon as we take the steps to become acclimated with the changes that are coming down the pike, it becomes a little simpler. So, I would say get involved.
I would say attend Valuation Expo.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I wasn't planning to do a plug for Val Expo, but I will tell you, we just got back from Val Expo a few weeks ago, And the quality and quantity of information that is shared there is just stellar. So there were representatives from Fannie, Freddie, the VA, and probably FHA, although I didn't connect with any of that crew, but yeah, they were there. So and the crew from Fannie did a great job, and Freddie did a great job of unpacking what's coming down the pike in terms of the new UAD, the new
Right.
form. And if you go to Fannie's website, as a matter of fact, or if you Google Fannie Mae new UAD, the top first option that you're presented with is a link to Fannie's website. And if you scroll down to appendix, I think it's D1, it'll provide you samples. It'll give you access to samples of the new URAR filled out in a variety of fashions, from 2 to 4 family to single family to condo. That's a great way to get started, like looking at that information, becoming familiar with what's going to be expected. But yeah, get involved, because there are a lot of really smart people that have spent a lot of time figuring this out, and they can explain what's coming. So yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm the host of Appraisal Buzz podcast. I'm one of the hosts of Valuation Expo. What I try to do is bring people that are much smarter than I am into the room to explain things to me and my appraiser friends, and that's literally how we approach this business. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, it's a bad room, right? But at Val Expo, we not only did we have Fannie, Freddie, VA, HUD, those guys there to explain what they're looking for, but we had direct lenders, AMCs, software providers. One of the things I've been thinking about for getting ready for the new UAD is I'm an a la mode total user. And we partnered with CoreLogic a la mode about a month ago to do a little education session where on day one we talked about appraisal inspections for real estate appraisers. And on day two, a la mode offered a 7-hour education class on total for mobile and mobile appraising. And I think if appraisers out there will start to get their head around embracing that mobile technology, that might be one specific thing they could do to get ready for the new UAD, because it's a data-driven process.
That's a great point. And I was speaking to somebody with a la mode, and they said 30% roughly of their subscribers have downloaded Total for mobile. Only 30%.
Yeah.
And so that to say, I heard, and somebody else said this at Val Expo, I won't take credit for it, but they said there will be grace given to those who are early adopters and make mistakes versus those who wait till the last minute and make mistakes, because the mistakes are going to happen, right? I mean, you're learning something new. It's okay. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it'll be a better process for everybody if all stakeholders take time to learn the new process, learn the new product, get involved early. And then you set yourself up to be in a value add position for your clients, because when Fannie Mae starts to slowly roll this, perhaps late next year, then right, then you'll be in a position to be able to meet your clients' needs. I mean, it's the way to go, in my opinion. I started using a Samsung Galaxy tablet and a disto laser 13 years ago. I was frankly a little resistant to it at first, but let me tell you, after those first few inspections, man, it was just so fast and so efficient.
I started switching to mobile in 2020, towards the end of the year 2020, and I had a friend of mine who I lean on for advice a lot in the appraisal world. He said, "Look," he said, "this is going to be a little bit painful, but trust me, do 10 inspections using Total for mobile. It will make your life easier." And the first 3, I'm going to tell you, Patrick, I was flummoxed. I'm trying to do it on my cell phone. I can't see things. I've got my reading glasses on. It's too bright. I'm doing all these things. But after the 10th one, I'm rocking through the house, taking photographs, dropping them in the sketch, labeling them right. It was, by the time I'm done with the inspection, when I get back to the office, all that stuff is in the report in the right order, ready to go. So I'm not Almost all of the software providers have a mobile application that you can use to gather that information in current terms for real estate appraisers to build the form, going forward in terms of the UAD, to gather that data to then build the report. I think if appraisers look, I've thought about this, I agree with myself. Patrick and I have just come up with two really good suggestions. Get involved, stay informed, go to a conference, come to Val Expo. We'd love to see you there. I think there's a lot of value in coming to Val Expo. Go to the Appraisal Summit, go to the ACTS conference, attend a local coalition meeting, go to the source. Don't talk to Jim Bob appraiser just down the street that's mad about everything. Talk to the source, right? I think that's a key thing, just to get yourself informed, number one. And number two, if you haven't already, start wrapping your head around mobile technology and how you can use it in the field. I promise you, Patrick, I think you'll agree with me. Once you get comfortable with mobile appraisal technology, your life actually becomes a lot easier if you're out there doing the inspections on a daily basis.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that clipboard and 100-foot fiberglass tape measure will probably never come out of your trunk again. So
I've still got it in the back of the truck.
well, you got to have a backup, right? You got to have a
Yeah.
contingency plan, but
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't do it any other way. It's worth the frustration of time to learn. Like you said, you'll want to frisbee that iPad across the yard first couple times, but
I love it. All right. Well, hey, Patrick, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Jim Morrison does this thing every time where he comes in and he asks us this random anonymous appraiser question. Last week, he asked the highest and best use question that kind of stymied me and the guest. But Jim, do we have an anonymous appraiser question?
We do. I think this one will be a little more of a softball for you.
Okay, good.
This was in our comments section on our YouTube. It says, and if anybody wants to give us any future questions, you can do comments at appraisalbuzz.com or just comment on our YouTube or articles. It says, I hope someone reads and answers this question. As a general rule of thumb, should appraisers use a property as a comp that's across a major barrier, i.e. a freeway, river, or large major street?
I'm going to jump in real quick and say I'm not a huge fan of rules of thumb when it comes to appraising real estate. I'm going to say that up front because my dad used to say, and I love my dad, and he was the one that trained me up when I was 13 to 18 years old, out measuring houses, holding the dumb end of the tape. He would say, rule of thumb, a fireplace adds X number of dollars. Rule of thumb, the bathroom adds X number of dollars. We can't do that, guys. We've got to have some support for these things. Patrick, your thoughts on rule of thumb for going across a major barrier, a physical barrier. Is that okay?
Yes, it is okay. And I love the question. And the answer is it'll always depend. It'll always depend on whether or not you as the appraiser can justify using that comp by data you can analyze for those two areas, subjects area and that area on the other side of this boundary. But you got to answer for it, because as sure as the sun rises and sets, lenders are going to ask if you do it. They're going to want to know why, and they're going to maybe even suggest that it wasn't appropriate. So you got to be able to back it up.
And I'll give an example from my backyard. So my neighborhood in Nashville is square up against the west margin of I-65 South coming out of downtown Nashville. When we bought our house in the year 2000, it would have been absolutely inappropriate to go to the east side of I-65 to look for comparables, because at that time, that neighborhood had not experienced the, purchases, renovations, resales that our neighborhood had. Now, it is possibly totally appropriate to go on the other side of I-65, because the neighborhoods were both built in roughly the same time frame. They have gone through similar transitions over the past 10, 15 years, and the market itself, sellers and buyers, no longer distinguish between those two areas as different. They identified that whole area as one market. So I think at the end of the day, the answer, it depends, is always going to be right there at the top of our minds as appraisal reviewers and as appraisers. But if the market is recognizing a boundary, then probably you ought to recognize the boundary. If the market is not recognizing the boundary, regardless of how big it may be, I think it's okay to cross that boundary and look for comparables.
Yeah.
I'll throw in a second part to this just because out of my own curiosity. You know, I live really close to the state line. Is that something that you would ever do? Would you go across state borders for an appraisal? If I mean, you're looking at the same ocean, you're probably using a lot of the same amenities, but it is, you know, different taxes and all that with the different states.
I would be very careful doing that personally, just because, for instance, Tennessee has a completely different tax structure than Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, West Virginia. It just does. And the differences in all of those things play into the market in general. So I'd be careful about that. There may be times when you've got a home that's inside of the city limits and a home that is outside of the city limits, and maybe the market doesn't see a difference there, and maybe it's a smaller town, so the difference between urban services and those services are not that great. I'd be very careful about going across state lines. Patrick, your thoughts?
Yeah, agreed. And for all the reasons you just stated, Hal, where we're located, we're right on the state line, right? I mean, stone's throw from the Kansas-Missouri state line. So, and it's one of those things I don't think I've ever seen, and for good reason, an appraiser in this market, either appraising in Missouri or appraising in Kansas, use comps from the opposite side of the line. And in my career, I've only ever seen that I can remember one appraisal where an appraiser did that, and this was in far north Florida, and the appraiser went north of the border to grab some comps, backed up to the same river, and that was wise, and the logic made sense, but it was still like, even as I saw that, it made me just kind of wince a little bit. So I'm like, that could be a real tough one to explain, but they did. And it
Yeah,
washed.
and look, Jim Morrison, I'll say this, that if you've got a unique property that has a unique feature and there's nothing in that area that has that feature, you may use a comp in another state to extract an adjustment for that feature. I mean, that's fine. But again, it all comes down to, you've got to explain what you did and why you did it and what its impact is on your conclusion of value. But as far as a major barrier, freeway, river, large major street, whatever, if it's in the same municipality, study it, see what the market sees it as, report what the market is doing. That's what I would say.
Well, thanks. I thought that was going to be a softball, but we went on pretty well for that one. So I appreciate the feedback, guys.
Well, Jim, do we have anything else we need to cover? I know you wanted to talk about the Buzzy Awards.
Yeah, before we go, we're still looking for nominations for our Buzzy Awards. You have until the end of September. You can nominate the Best Appraiser, the AMC of the Year, Lender of the Year, Best New Technology. We're looking for all that input from our appraiser subscribers. So it's bit.ly/Buzzy2025, and we'll put the link below.
Yeah, and if you're a listener, a lot of people have already responded to the Buzzy Awards survey. If you've got somebody that you're really proud of, you think they're doing a great job as an appraiser, get in there and nominate them. End of September, we're going to close the voting and we're going to start tallying the votes. We have no input into what the results are. We're going to let the public, make those determinations, but do check it out. And if you can't remember the URL that Jim Morrison just said, it'll be underneath this video or underneath the podcast in the description section, so you can just click on it, go right to the survey, and take the survey, put in your vote for who you think the best appraiser, who you think the best client is, those kind of things. We'd love to have you there. Morrison, anything else we got to cover?
That's it. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, in that case, for Jim Morrison and Patrick Brown, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.